Welcome to the Saturday session where I rate and review every single team that played on Saturday. And for the round 12 version, we have got three pretty good games to talk about. Well, two really good ones and a shellacking, but depending on how you feel about the losing side, you could have seen it as a really good game as well. So with plenty of further ado, let's rate all of the sides that played from 6 to 1. So who was the worst team on Saturday? Could it have been anyone else? And what's kind of interesting is that this Saturday was three teams that were in the 8, played three teams that were not in the 8 at the start of the round, and we had one upset, one escape, and one absolute belting. And of course, that is what we are talking about with the Swans, because holy shit, this was bad. Genuinely bad. They got bitch slapped, the Swans did. Now, granted, two of the three away teams this round won, and the other away team admittedly probably should have. With 12 months more experience, they would have. This was just awful. And the Swans are that. They're awful. Now, granted, yes, first-year coach injuries, you can have reasons, not excuses, because you've still got to put effort on the line. And for the first half, they wilted, which was not good enough. Isaac Heaney and Chad Warner, if they were their talent equivalent in a basketball team, you can carry, but you can't carry a football team with two superstars. You never have been. You never will be able to, right? I don't even care if this was 1920 that we're talking about. Teams still have to have decent enough role players for that time, and the Swans just don't have that. Their role players are not in form. Their veterans are not in form. Dane Rampy and Brodie Grundy are not in very good form at the moment, and this was just yuck. The epitome of bad. Like, I've been trying. I watched the entire first half. I watched 22 minutes of the third quarter. They had 15 minutes of resistance. Boo-hoo. As far as I'm concerned, I'm trying to think of a positive, and I am struggling to come up with one. Justin McInerney wasn't awful. There we go. There's your positive. Where they go from here, they've just got to try sort of as many kids as they can. I think Jesse Totoli is going to come in. He had a pretty good VFL game. I like the statement selection they made with Ollie Florent and dropping him. Could they do that with a couple of others? Absolutely they can. But hopefully we see more of Caleb Mitchell. Hopefully we see more of Corey Warner, who I know has played a few games this year, or most of the games this year, actually. I hope we see more out of their youngsters. So that is the positive. But apart from that, this was bad. Real bad. How quickly do you think Gold Coast are petitioning to play all of their home games in Darwin? I am just kidding. But overall, wet conditions, everything about this should have suited Gold Coast. Now, granted, I don't think they should have played with a second tall forward. And I'm not saying Jed Walter deserved to not play, but why you would play him in these conditions made no sense. And you could say, but Freo played Tracy and Amos, Daz. What the hell are you doing? Yeah, I understand that, but Ben King is what Ben King is. He is your stay-at-home forward, whereas Tracy and Amos, especially in that last quarter, Tracy more so in the second and third, could get up the ground. That's not what King does, and Walter doesn't have the body shape yet. He's close, but not yet, in order to provide that contest, and Jared Witts had enough to deal with the two ruckmen. So overall, they were lacking that sort of get-out-of-jail contest, and not necessarily to win it, just to halve it. The intercept play by the Dockers was really good, and for, of course, the Suns was really bad. And overall, I honestly think the scoreboard kind of flattered them in the end. They had a good 10 minutes to nearly end the game. They nearly got in front, and Ben Long had moments that suggested that they could have stolen the game. Like, absolutely, that was on the table. But overall, I am kind of glad they lost it, because yes, you can pinch a game, no doubting that in the slightest, but they had a little scare against the Hawks, and I think this could be good for them long term, just another stepping stone towards their first finals appearance. But they got beaten by a better team on the day. Are Freo better than them overall? We'll wait and see, but this is going to be another maturity test for Gold Coast. They've passed the majority of them this year. This is just a chance at another one. In terms of positives, I will lay just about most of them on the captain, Noah Anderson, who was fantastic again. Could he be a smoky for the Brownlow? And Joel Jeffrey, who I thought was fan-bloody-tastic down back for the Suns for the majority of this game. So they slide in at number 5, and granted, on any other day, maybe in any other round, they would be stiff. As yes, I know with their home team, I know that they lost to a team that was not in the 8 coming in, but it was wet. They didn't play awfully, and they lost by under 3 goals. So, potentially stiff? Maybe. First of all, before we get into any Giants analysis, if this is the way that Cal Ward's career ends and if it is an ACL, man, that is just awful. The scenes with Lachie Whitfield were almost tear-inducing, to be honest. But what he's been able to do for that football club, as imperative as your Kevin Sheedys and these kinds of players, he was a foundational Giant with basically the world on his shoulders alongside Phil Davis from a playing point of view, as they had that experience as the youngsters that were coming into that side. They were the bridge between the 18-year-olds that were coming in abundance, your Trelaws, your Camerons, your Cornelios, just these kind of guys. And then, of course, your Luke Powers, Dean Brogans, and Chad Corns, and Heath Shaw, and all of these guys that eventually either came in at the start or the veteran presences that lifted this side. He effectively was that bridge and did it beautifully. The way he plays the game is the right way to do it. He's tough, he's hard, and from all accounts, I haven't had the opportunity to meet Cal, a ripping bloke as well. So fingers crossed for a speedy recovery, whether that's still in the AFL system or not. I wish him all the best. From a team point of view, this is conflicting because you go a comeback of that magnitude. They were down for as much as 34 points, I should say. So you do get credit for that no matter who you come back against. Overall, was this impressive? Sure. Like that. I'm not even of the opinion of like, well, it's Richmond, you should beat them by this amount of points. And look, I can get that contradicts the fact that they still won the game and I'm kind of giving them shit here. But they were goddamn butt awful for 2.5 quarters of this game. And I think that's the thing that we've got to take into consideration here. Now, yes, lesser sides would have faltered and not made the comeback, or if they did, faltered at the end. Kind of what Gold Coast did, albeit against a better opponent. I still can't shake the feeling that I do not feel any better about the Giants right now than I did, last week. So that, I think, has to say something and why they slot into this number 4 spot, to be perfectly honest with you. So where do they go from here? Hard to tell, but yeah, not great. Yes, I'm putting the Tigers above the Giants, even though they lost the game, because context is important. Now, of course, when I've been judging Richmond this year, and I've kind of been on the Richmond wagon, I had their over on the win total, which is just aging to perfection right about now. But the way that we judge the Tigers for me, because I know everyone's going to focus on the kids, but Richmond are only going to be as good as their senior guys. And Dion Prestia reminding us once again that if you had hamstrings that were just not genetically screwed, that what he could have been, and this is already coming from a guy who's been a very good footballer, by the way, you just can't help but wonder if his hammies weren't giving up on him seemingly every half a dozen games, what that could have looked like. But Taranto was fantastic, Vlosten was fantastic, and the senior guys that came back in were good, and that's awesome, because what they were able to put together was fantastic. Sam Banks is playing awesome footy. Hugo Ralphsmith on the wing, a guy I'm very much a fan of, was fantastic. Luke Traynor was really good, and my love for him last year being justified in a perfect way. I'm not trying to make this about me. I'm really not. But that was all too awesome. And it sucks they couldn't get over the line. 10 goals, 17. You just wonder how much that inaccuracy played a role. And of course, they just ran out of legs. And if you're coming at this from a side that everyone expected to be winless, and a side that was expected to lose this game by 7.5 goals, if you listen to the betting markets or if you watch the betting markets, to put that performance together was super impressive, and they deserve a lot of credit. And Adam Uze right now, I'm not saying he's the coach of the year or anything, but in terms of defying expectations, Richmond have to be in the top 3 or 4, don't they? Like Gold Coast, if you want to go down that path, Adelaide are definitely up there. Whatever you thought of the Pies this year, Richmond have kind of got to be on that list. The Bulldogs are up there, of course, with their injuries, so in season, but pre-season wise, it's weird to say, but they're flying, which is awesome. They hadn't beaten the Swans in their last 6 matches, walked onto the SCG, and in 1 hour of footy had punched them in the mouth. That was so good by the Crows. And as I said, I am recording this without knowing the final score. The game is still going on, but I wanted to get this done and the game's over. But holy shit, this was impressive to watch. And look, this is how I know that I'm a bit of a footy sicko, is that I actually enjoyed this game. This was not a bad viewing experience, and not in a Sydney bashing kind of way, but in a, this is awesome watching what they were doing, that they were systematically cutting apart the Swans. Again, I know that I am not the same as every other neutral fan out there, believe me, but it was so good. It was so clinical. that it almost became addictive to watch. I couldn't really do anything else at that point. The breaks weren't distracting or anything like that. And watching guys like Isaac Cumming and Sam Berry playing their roles, watching how much Alex Neil-Bullen took the piss, watching Mark Keane just become, one of the more dependable defenders in the league, basically out of nowhere in the last 6 weeks. Watching the development of Jordan Butts. Josh Rochelli's last 2 weeks have been fantastic. Was also the flop of the year, though, Josh. I'd say you're better than that. I'm not sure if you are, but your talent is worth it better than what that was. But hey, you got the 50-meter penalty out of it, so if it costs you $1,500, who gives a damn? To be perfectly honest, not with the money that the footballers are on. Jesus. But it was sick. It was awesome. I loved it, to be honest. And I will say this until the day I die, I think, is I was not wrong on Adelaide last year. I was early, because nearly everything that I said in that 2024 top 4 video is coming true now. So I wasn't wrong. I was just early. But this was awesome. And Riley Thilthorpe, when in God-loving Christ did you become one of the best field kicks? Like, he had 2 kicks, one to Isaac Rankin on transition where he had nothing up ahead after the Swans comeback, where he put it between 3 Swans midfielders, or 3 Swans defenders, I should say, and just laced out Rankin. Yes, it was 20 metres on the angle, but still, as a big bloke, that you've got to hit that. And he had another one, and I think it was to Luke Pedler on the outer side, which was so good. Like, Pedler didn't break stride, and I think just kicked it to a contest and got a boundary throw-in, so nothing really happened with that contest, but I was just like, this is taking the piss. He's taking a leaf out of Tex's book, and everything worked. Everything is working, and what's more impressive than their offensive output, the Crows, is how well they are setting up behind the ball. Yes, the Swans don't have a forward line that can really compete at the moment, but the way that they just shut that shit down for 1 goal 4 in the first quarter was just unreal. Was so good. So good. So if you're wondering why the hell they're not number 1 after a glowing endorsement like that, let me explain. Yes, I am deeming Freo as the most impressive team over the Saturday because they went into a better team's home ground. They went into a top 4 team's home stadium in conditions that suited the home top 4 team and beat them at their own game. They beat them on the outside, which in the wet makes no sense. But they did that. And especially when Gold Coast were coming, they had a couple of moments where they had momentum and Freo were able to stop them before they got inside 50. It wasn't up to Luke Ryan. It wasn't up to Josh Draper. It wasn't up to the Freo defenders in order to get the ball going. The way that they were able to ambush the Suns at half forward and the wing. Sam Switkowski in that first quarter was absolute proof of that. Wagner was really good. Jeremy Sharp had some really good moments. And then you lead into that final quarter. Fife is the sub. Look, Fife's not Fife. We know that. But he played a role. And let me tell you, between Murphy Reid, Archie Roberts, and Harvey Langford, someone is going to be the unluckiest 3rd placing in a Rising Star ever. Because all 3 of those boys just seemingly just go, holy smokes, is this just frightening to watch. Murphy's last quarter was unbelievable, genuinely unbelievable. Bailey Banfield did some really nice things in the wet. Didn't know he was a wet weather player, but did some really nice things. And of course, effectively, the difference between the two was seemingly Shea Bolton, which is what they got him for, which is why I did a video about him. But overall, I have Freo ahead of Adelaide just because they went into a better team's building and won. They didn't win by more, and they didn't restrict Gold Coast like Adelaide restricted the Swans. But I will take upsetting a top 4 team than going on the road against a bottom 6 team and smacking them. I can understand if you disagree with that opinion, but overall, they are my rankings, guys. What do you think? Comment below. Let me know. Like the video if you like the video. Subscribe to join the Daz Talks Footy cohort. If you want to see me have a breakdown over the Hawks v Collingwood game for 7.5 minutes, go check that out. I think that's just the way it works. You guys just want me to be emotional and have breakdowns, but I can only do that about my team. So if you hit the like button, more people have got access to watching it. I hope you're having a fantastic weekend, and I will see you tomorrow for the Sunday Spotlight, which is me shining a light on the 5 biggest talking points from a big Sunday of footy. There's only 2 games on, so that's going to be really fun. Hope to see you there. I will see you in the next video. Goodbye.